tonight is Gary Kay from the Big Book Solutions Group.
Good evening, everybody. Let me read the board up there and see if I know everyone who's in the room. It's good to see y'all. I am an alcoholic. My name is Gary Kincaid.
Hi, Gary.
And I am really, 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 really grateful for a sobriety date, for a new life that started July 25th, 1994. And let me put this coffee down before I spill it. I was thinking earlier, I've never done a hybrid group. Then I was talking to Jackie and I said, you know, when I think about it, I believe every meeting of AA is some kind of hybrid group. It may be a different definition than what we're using online. I live in Sulphur Springs, Texas. Always get this part out of the way early on. I live there because of the grace of God through the 12-step program of Alcoholics Anonymous. It's been made possible, the life I have today, by you people in this program. I have 2 children, a son and a daughter, that I abandoned in my alcoholism. They live in Sulphur Springs, Texas. And because of this program, life has been changed, and now they won't be, or at least they allow me in their life. And for that, I'm grateful. So I don't know everyone that's on the Zoom meeting. I'm not sure how much sobriety Kiki has. Of course, I know these 2 gentlemen very well. I will say, if you're new here, or if I don't know you on this meeting, there's a lot of people on this meeting right now that I love deeply. Some of you I've only met in the last year or so, and you're already so much part of my life that if you're really new, you may not even understand yet how much of a part of my life you are. If you stay here, you're going to find that out. Now, I'll get right to it because we're really here not to hear me. We're here to celebrate something that can't happen. It's absolutely impossible. Any of y'all that know Jackie Babb know it's impossible. We're here to celebrate his AA sobriety, 7 years. Stuff like that don't happen. But it happens all the time around here. And I have given some thought to what I was going to share tonight. Some of y'all know me. I hardly ever share the same thing 2 times in a row. I don't really know what I'm going to talk about when I get started. I do think about it a little bit. But I want to draw your attention to the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous. And if you're not heavily involved with that book, I highly recommend it. Otherwise, what you're doing in AA is just kind of like whizzing in the wind. But there is a description of us that starts in the doctor's opinion. And I won't go over the whole description, but in about the middle of the doctor's opinion, he starts talking about the various kinds. And some of you may be aware of that. There is one kind that he announces in this way. Then there is that type of alcoholic, perfectly normal in every way, except when they take a drink. I want to share with you that I don't see any of that type right now. In my experience in AA, I have not met that type of alcoholic. I don't know where those people go to get sober, but it's not Alcoholics Anonymous. But nearly every one of you were probably as I was when I first got introduced to AA. I had heard that information since I was about that high about the people in my life, like my father and one of my grandparents and a number of my aunts and uncles, that if they would just not drink, then everything would be okay. And I don't know why, but I came to believe that that might be true. You know, I've looked back on that, and I really didn't have any basis for that to be a true statement. Because as I look back at my daddy and his twin brother and my grandparents and those aunts and those uncles, you know what? None of them ever hit a point in their life when they just didn't drink. They all went on to the bitter end and all died as active alcoholics. But that was still good information at the beginning. If you just won't drink, Gary, you're going to be okay. So in June of 1988, I went to my first meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. Voluntarily, I might tell you. I love that term in AA. I didn't have to come here. I'm a volunteer. I didn't have to get a piece of paper signed. I volunteered for recovery. I want to share with you that if you're saying that, that's a lie. I said it too, but I was lying. I've never met a volunteer for AA. Something drives us here. Now, in June of 1988, I've had a chance to look back on this of what drove me to you people the first time. I got my first job that I'd had in 5 years. No, 4 years. In December of 87. My mother had been killed by a drunk driver in February of 88. And I used to say that impacted me so hard that I went into a spiral where all I could do was to drink up over that. Today I realize I've been circling the drain for about 15 years when that happened. But for whatever reason, I found a meeting in Dallas, Texas. It was the Oak Cliff group. Any of you all have ever been there? They got a stairway that goes up to the meeting hall. I walked up there and it was full of folks. I can't remember if I spoke to anybody or if anybody spoke to me. But I sat down in a chair and a guy named Jimmy Daniel. Some of y'all may have heard Jimmy over the years. He's now deceased. But Jimmy was speaking that night. And Jimmy told a story. And part of that story was he got sent to prison. And while he was in prison, his wife was murdered and his children were taken in by Child Protective Services. And he had no idea where they were because he was in prison. And he started telling that story, and it got me so upset that I did not stay for the meeting. I left because I needed a drink after hearing that story. Because all it brought up in me were ideas about what a terrible father I was. And I couldn't stand that, so I went, well, got drunk. Now, a couple of weeks after that, this first job I'd had in 4 years, I went into work one morning, and the secretary said, you need to sit down in the lobby. They're here from Indianapolis, and they're firing people. Well, that was enough for me. I did not sit in the lobby. I got in my car. I left. I went back to the house. I had a couple of drinks, and I started thinking. And I came up with an idea. And that idea was that if I went to treatment, it's an illness and they can't fire me. We had a bonus period coming up the second week of July. And by my figures, I was due about $6,000 bonus. And I needed to stay employed long enough to get that money. So if I went to treatment, they couldn't fire me. And I was right. Which I always was back then. And my plan worked. And they ended up coming to the treatment center where I was, bringing another I also had the company car and had a couple of briefcases and had a lot of information they needed. And so they brought me a contract saying that they would go ahead and pay the bonus if I would relinquish the car keys, sign out, resign, all that stuff. So I got what I wanted. And I immediately checked out treatment. But a strange thing had happened. They had taken us to several meetings of AA while I was there at treatment. And I loved it. We were going mainly to the Duncanville group, big group. I don't know if any of you local folks have ever, in the 80s, they had these big groups all over the Dallas area. And they partied every weekend. There was a dance somewhere. We had a group here called the Alpha Group, and they had a party every weekend. And I discovered in AA the same women that I've been chasing out there in bars, only they were in here, and it was a hell of a lot cheaper than it was out there. And I liked the people. I loved, quote, the fellowship. And back then, I was a pretty smart guy. I could get the book, I could remember some of the stuff, and I could say good stuff. Because that was when a lot of the psychobabble was first starting to come into AA. And a lot of the meetings, I wasn't sharing ever any experience, strength, and hope. I was sharing, my understanding of the way I could give direction to people about how they could do such things as establish boundaries in their life. How they could begin to understand why they're the way they are because of some of their early childhood development issues and those kind of things. So man, I could spout that stuff out pretty good. And I could do that because at one time I'd been a licensed therapist in the state of Texas. And at the same time, I'd also been an active United Methodist pastor in the state of Texas. So I knew a lot of stuff that would really help you people out a good deal. Now, I might add right quickly, that license had been removed from me and that church had kicked me out of it. But I retained all of my charisma and all of my knowledge, and that made me available to help you people. And I really used it to develop relationships within AA. So I was going to meetings. I had a sponsor. And I shared prolifically. Any time that I was called on, if I wasn't, that happened to be a meeting where you could raise your hand. They asked for those things. By the way, if you're here and you're new, this time around in AA, I have never asked when I was chairing a meeting, does anyone have a burning desire? Because I'm pretty certain there's going to be somebody out there just like me, the way I used to be, and they'll have one. And we don't need to hear it. Needless to say, I made it 4 months. 4 months. And in that 4 months, here's what AA did for me. One of you got me a job. This always tickles me. You got me a job as a probation officer for Dallas County. And I could clean up, and I still interviewed pretty well. And I did that interview at Dallas County, decided right away, this man is qualified to be an intensive probation officer, taking the hardest cases. And they looked at my education and they said, we'll get this guy working with people that have drug and alcohol problems. Who better? Well, at 4 months, I went to a Sunday morning meeting. The speaker is telling his story. And this is how long it took me, folks. It took me this long to hear this part of your message. In the middle of that speaker, it hit me. And I remember kind of looking around the room and I said, these people really are talking about not drinking anything ever again. You weren't fooling me on that day about this one day at a time thing, which, by the way, I find out later is not in our big book. Y'all were talking about what we have to offer you if you're new here today, and that's victory over alcohol and permanent sobriety. I never got that message because I didn't want that message. 6 years later, things get worse. Of course, I got fired from that job. I was in between marriages when I came in '88. I had another one of those, and I was in between that one and the next one in '94. I was so much further estranged from my children. When I got sober, they were 19. And by then, one of them had told me, I want nothing to do with you. And the other one, my daughter would call from time to time. Some of you older folks remember a time before cell phones. Some of y'all remember a time before answering machines. And I can remember one of the things in 1994 that scared me the most was the telephone. And it would ring, and I didn't know if it was going to be a bill collector. I didn't know if it might be my daughter. And I was afraid to pick it up because I knew I couldn't sound sober enough to convince her that I wasn't drinking. That phone used to just terrorize me. What I'm saying is that every external part of my life by 1994 was a great deal worse than it was in 1988. But this time, on Sunday, the 24th of July in 1994, I suddenly realized that I can't not drink. I really hadn't tried to fight it until about 3 years before then. And for 3 years, it was a daily deal with me. I'm not going to drink today. And I rarely made it past about 10 o'clock in the morning. And I would do a little bit of what Bill talks about on page 24 of our book. And mine would be kind of pounding on the bar saying, how did it happen again? And then I'd go on finishing the day drinking. Somewhere mid-morning, the next morning, I would make up my mind, not today, and I'm doing that day after that. And what what I'm trying to share with you is this. In 1988, it was all the emotions and all of the troubles of family, job, life, children, some legal things that I thought were bearing down on me so much it'd be a real good idea if I didn't drink for a while so I could have a little bit of time to figure this stuff out. But in 1994, all of that stuff was worse than it was in 1988. But the only thing driving me on that first day was I can't not drink. I can't not drink. I've got to find some way to not drink. I knew a guy in AA. I went to his office, and I usually spend a lot of time in my story talking about this. I'm not going to this evening. I'll just tell you that my experience this time was I got taken to my first meeting. And that's been my experience in AA since I've been here this time. I've been brought in, I've been led in, I've been included. There have been those of you who are already here that really had a deep understanding. At the bottom of page 152 and the top of 153. What our purpose is join shoulder to shoulder so that others might rediscover life. And I got dropped into a group of people that knew that. 20 years of drinking, I didn't have the DTs. The last 7 I did. You stay out there long enough, you lose the insurance, you lose family support. And I didn't even know this till after I got sober. From that first meeting, the guy who's going to become my sponsor assigned his pigeons to me, and somebody was with me 24 hours a day for those first 4 days. I've got no recall. They were taking me to a couple of meetings every day. I was crazy as hell when I found out y'all like this better than me. One of those guys told me, you need to get that guy as your sponsor. And I went over to that guy and I asked, and that guy accepted me. And we got started in this program. I got detox. And this is the thing that might kill people like me and maybe like you. That first week to 10 days, the only thing on my mind was I can't not drink. All I want is just a way to live to not drink. I didn't believe, by the way, that it could happen. But we're strange people. I got detox. I'm meeting with this guy twice a week, reading the book out loud together. He's spending a lot of time with me on step 1 because our literature spends a lot of time on step 1. But within about 2 weeks, that urgency to not drink started to fade a little bit. And it began to get on my mind about the children. I hadn't filed income taxes in 8 years. I was on the IRS's offense list. And that started bothering me. I needed a job. You know, if I could get a job, that had always been, if I could just get enough money and get back on my feet, I'm going to be okay. I'm going through another divorce. I've got a pickup, an old 11-year-old Ford Ranger. And the only reason I've got that truck is that my father, 3 years before, had a stroke while he was dead drunk. And it left him in a nursing home. And the only reason I had any stuff is I got my daddy's stuff. That daddy who I viewed in a very condescending way. And very shortly, I started getting concerned about all of these troubles and problems going on. And I needed some solution to those. And one of the greatest things that's ever happened to me in my life happened when I started bringing that up to Jerry Graves, my first sponsor, sitting in his living room while we're in the chapter more about alcohol. And I told him about the divorce. I told him about the IRS. I told him about some other legal problems. I told him about the health trouble I'm having. I told him about all of these problems. And that man, I believe, started saving my life that day. And I always want to share this with people. He looked at me and he said, Gary, what you're telling me about, those are not problems. Your children, that's not a problem. The IRS, that's not a problem. The other legal stuff, those aren't problems. Your health stuff, that's not a problem. The job, the no automobile, those are not problems. He said, Gary, those are consequences. Your entire life, you've been concentrating on consequences in your life and looking for answers to those, believing that would give you an answer for your life. And you've never identified the problem that keeps spewing out the consequences. And if you're coming in here asking me to be your sponsor, trying to be a part of AA for the purpose of getting your wife back, hit the door. So your children will call you dad, and the birds will sing, and the violin will play, hit the door. So you'll get a good job, hit the door. So the IRS is going to give you a break, hit the door. We're not going to promise you anything about the outcomes of those consequences, other than every consequence that's already rolling downhill is going to keep on rolling. And just because you come to AA doesn't mean that suddenly those are going to disappear. I thought he didn't hear me. But what I'm to find out later is the other thing he said to me, and this I never want to fail to share, telling my story. He made a promise. Neither one of my two sponsors makes many promises. And the people that I work with will find out that I don't make many promises either. But he made me this promise, and I'll make this promise to anybody. He said, if you will do what we do out of this book, I don't know what's going to happen to all of those consequences. But I do know you will get victory over alcohol, and you will experience some new direction in your life, and you're going to experience a relationship with the God you do business with. And that's going to be like a rock thrown in the pond, and the ripples are going to go out and touch the children, touch the IRS, and touch every one of those consequences. And the day is going to come when you're going to be free from every one of them. They may not look the way you think they need to look in order to be okay. But the day is going to come when you're going to be absolutely not only okay, but you're going to be astounded by how all of this gets worked out. I didn't have any faith, but I was able to have a little bit of belief in it. And the belief came because of people like you who were already here trying to live, not just to not drink, trying to live to not drink, but with an entire new attitude and outlook on all of life. I knew nothing then, nothing, not anything cognitive about being of service to others, about being a giver rather than a taker, of becoming a participant with this God you are going to give me in a journey through life rather than looking at God as one to, here, God, you take this, please. I knew nothing about that, but what I did know was what those men and women in the suburban group in Odessa lived out in front of me. I got to know enough of them well enough that I believed it. I believed it when they would tell me their stories, usually one-on-one, most of the time at the coffee shop or in the car going to or coming back someplace. And I came to believe that at one time they were just as I was. We were like people that the flood of life has come to us. And I was the little Dutch boy that my whole life here would come a leak and I put in a finger, another leak, another finger, another leak, another finger. And what happened to me by July the 25th, 1994 is I was out of digits. There were so many things coming through, I didn't have any way not only to keep them from not coming, but to believe they wouldn't just continue to overwhelm. And I believe that they had once been that way too, and I could see and I could hear from them that they were no longer that way. And none of them said, oh, Gary, everything's going to be okay. None of them ever said, oh, man, with 4 months, your life's just going to be beautiful. They said, here's what we do. And they got me behind them to do that stuff. I didn't have any faith in it, but I believed it worked for them. Now, what I would share tonight with any of you is that today I don't believe any of that stuff. I have total faith in it. It's no longer a belief. I can look back and see that what's happened to me, like I was laughingly saying about Jackie earlier, is impossible. And I'm not talking about money. I'm not talking about where I live. The impossible part is how are these men to be well respected? How are these men to have this kind of life? Well, if these things can happen among us, they can happen with you. And I can look back and see that everything those people shared with me is absolutely happened. And none of it, people. That divorce, that I was going through, it went on. We got divorced. Those children that I was ashamed of being their father, it basically took about 9 years for us to have a relationship. And I always want to say to parents, the relationship we have today is the one we have today that has been built on what's happened since July of 94. There's no way the power of God through this program could go back into my children's life from their ages about 7 to 20 and recreate for them some wonderful childhood where I was a wonderful dad. we both missed out on that. And if I'm looking for some kind of closeness with them today that would have been based on those kind of things happening, then I would always be lost in that relationship. I had to come to understand what the doctor says, and the doctor's opinion is absolutely true for us folks. And I call this a very practical, pragmatic approach, but it's not mystical, it's not magical, it's not fairy dust. He says if these people are to recreate their lives, then they have to be grounded in this power greater than themselves. He doesn't say, oh, if you're going to get back what you lost, if you're going to get back at that time of innocence, all that stuff that might have happened when the kids were 7 or 8 or 9 or 10, that ain't going to happen. You get to recreate your life based on a set of principles, spiritual in their nature, which, if practiced as a way of life, can expel the obsession to drink. That's happened. And allow the sufferer to live happily and usefully whole. And I'll tell you, that not only has happened, it has happened all the time. And none of my life today looks like anything I would ever dream my life ought to have looked like. How that come about? Have any of you ever had some good ideas about how to do shortcut AA? Mm-hmm. Evidently, there's a bunch of them out there. There's about a $2 billion a year industry around recovery. And we got people writing books after books after books after books about how to do basically AA better. My experience is we've only got one program, and it's what's outlined in that book. And there's not any way to do it better. There's just a way to do it. I've been doing the same basic actions of AA since I was about 18 months old. I'm doing the same stuff today I was doing at 18 months. It took me about 18 months to finally get the rituals down of doing the 10th and 11th step on a regular basis, of always reaching my hand out for new people, of always being on the lookout for a new person. Since I was about 11 months sober, and this is nothing about me, this is what I was shown to do and I've been taught to do, I've always had a new person. They're easy to find. They're easier to find today than they've ever been. I mean, God Almighty, we got thousands of them on Zoom. When I left Odessa when I was 11 years sober, I noticed y'all have a clock around here. Okay. I came to East Texas. I didn't know anybody here. My sponsor said, you're going to find you a newcomer right away. And I said, I don't know anybody here. He said, go to a meeting. They're going to come in there, pick you out one, and tell them you're their sponsor. They don't know any better. Just get you one. And by the time they find out that they're supposed to be choosing, it'll be too late. Y'all be halfway through the steps. And every time I've been without one, I've come to a meeting that got me one. And it's never been bad for them or. But I'm doing the same things now that I did then, only now I do them different. I'm not doing anything different, but I'm doing it differently. I'm doing it out of total gratitude. I'm not doing it anymore. And again, this is not about me. There are many on this meeting tonight that know the experience. I'm doing it because I can look back and see what's happened and think, why in the hell would I want to change what's been working? Why would I want to try to add something to something that's already done a perfect job all my life? Why would I want to go look for more when I've already got everything? And in the beginning, I was doing it out of bit. If I don't do it, I'll probably get drunk. And I don't know when that changed to, by doing this, I've been kept sober, and I look and see how good my life is. And so it becomes out of gratitude. But it's the same thing. I could share with you all day long about power that I was introduced to as the result of being taken through the steps. Not perfectly, but trying. You know, our book uses that wonderful language: seek, salt, try, effort. It never says you got to be an A+ student every day. If that's on your mind, forget it. None of us are on the A honorable in AA. The results of that, for me, many of you talk about the results that happened with the 5th step. Mine have been the 9th step. When I started making those direct amends, I had a sponsor that didn't say, well, when God wants you to do it, he'll put them in your path. He said, find out where they are and go do the direct amends now. God will be your partner, but he's not going to do it for you. It's that old deal you hear in meetings all the time. God will move mountains, but he expects me to bring a shovel. I've got to be a part of it. And some of the things I discovered out of that is the truth that were found in the pages of the event. A long period of reconstruction lies before us. The spiritual life is not a theory. We have to live it. AA is not a place I go to. AA is a way of living. If you are new or if you're playing around with this thing, AA is a bad place to visit. This is a move-in thing. As one friend of mine in the program says, a lot of people come to AA and try to fit in. And we've been trying to fit in our whole lives out there. And there was not much fulfillment in that. This is not a place we come to fit in. This is the place we come to join. And to join in that common effort, which starts with and stays with working shoulder to shoulder so that others might discover and recover their lives. I can't do that if I haven't been shown the example of that. I can't do that if people like Jackie don't come along and do it, if people like Simon don't come along and do it, and people like David and Ricky don't stay here and continue to do it. We don't do any of this stuff alone. We do it together. And we see it as a journey and not as a destination, not a quitting time. Again, why would I want to stop? And I'll always share with people as I get close to wrapping up here. Being sober doesn't mean life doesn't keep coming at us. Some of those consequences we brought in here with us, some of those take a long time to heal. And since I'm the kind of person that will continually try to get back and start fixing the new ones that arrive, I've continually created new consequences since I've been here. that requires the same trust God, clean house, and work with others to heal. But I will tell you that every one of them I came in with is long, long, long gone. None of that trouble is any part of my life today, other than just say every once in a while, how in the hell did God make it turn out this good? Took some time, but it's well worth the effort. So again, like I say, this is not my normal talk, if I have one. But I want to lead you again, or leave you again with some of the big book. It's one of my favorite promises. I've got two favorite promises in that book. I've shared one of them with you, the bottom of 52, 152, and the top of 153. And the other one is that first full paragraph on page 100. Each day, not every now and then, or not when you really get in trouble again, need to get out of it. And each day is the day. You and the new man must walk the path of spiritual progress. If you persist, and look at the language, not if you do it perfectly, not if everybody thinks you're the finest thing in the world, not if you always got a great attitude and just, I'm so damn glad to be doing this, I can't hardly stand it. No, it doesn't say that. It says if you persist, you just stay at it, hitting that lick. Remarkable things will happen. That both of my children call me dad today is remarkable. That I'm retired. I don't have much, but I have everything in the world. That's remarkable. That I don't lay awake at night anymore wondering about if only I'd done this or if only this had happened. That every bit of the victim that was in me when I got brought to you people has been taken out of it. That's remarkable. Remarkable things will happen. We found, we, that being the first 100, and I can join that now, that follow the dictates of a higher power. That's the 12 steps. And I don't remember the exact quote, but it ends with, these remarkable things will happen. You will presently live in a new and wonderful world, no matter what your present circumstances. And please hear this, your present circumstances might find you with 40 years sober, it might find you with 40 days sober. This is not a promise just for new people, this is a promise for all of us. Follow those dictates of a higher power. And no matter what your present circumstances, remarkable things will happen. Jackie, I can't always believe that for me, but I can't not believe that for any new person I sit down in front of. And therefore, the real joy and the real juice for me behind living this way of life comes from sharing it with someone else. Because on the days I may feel so depressed about my life that I don't want to believe it, but I've already got that commitment to be with that new guy or that new gal, I can't not believe it for them. And every time I share it with them, it comes alive for me. So I want to thank all of you, old and new, the ones I've known forever and the ones I've known for a few minutes, for staying on, getting on, and staying on this path so I can enjoy this walk too. And I'm supposed to give him his chip here in a second, so I'm going to do that this way. What my sponsor today tells me, the way he sponsors people, is the way I try to sponsor. I'm hopeful that if my kid ever walks into one of these rooms, he's going to find someone that gives him what I found when I got there. And it becomes my job to try to share that with other people. So that my kid walks in, he meets you, he's going to get what I got. Jackie, all I'll tell you, get this chip, is I hope to hell if my kid ever walks in, he meets someone like you. Thank you, and thank y'all.